Hi, Anthony. It's so good to see you again.
Hey, Rami, likewise. Yeah.
Great. Could you take just a couple of minutes and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Oxford Cryo?
Yeah, sure. So I first met Rami when I was the managing director of Oxford Cryo Systems. So Oxford Cryo Systems are a business that manufactures cryo coolers and cryogenic systems, mainly for use in scientific sort of endeavors, so experiments, things like that. My background is an engineer by formal training, and then I've spent the last 15 years or so running various types of manufacturing businesses, ranging from material science to scientific instrumentation.
Brilliant. And tell me a little bit about what were some of the the one or two biggest challenges that you were facing in product development at Oxford?
Yeah, so our big problem, I suppose, really was that the business had been founded off the back of a very good and successful product idea. And over the years, way before my time, lots of new products had been sort of developed, but none of those products had really got the same sort of traction in the marketplace that the main product that CryoStream had and continued to have. And so we had a lot of products that were, sold, to be frank, quite disappointing numbers. And we were very keen that we could get our development team to design and develop products that actually replicated the success of the CryoStream and not replicated the somewhat failure of the other products, essentially. So it was really about trying to ensure that we develop the right things, and also to try and inject a bit of pace into that as well.
The thing with Oxford that's interesting, though, is that the company actually performs really well. I mean, it's not like you guys did not perform well financially. You actually have a really good financial record.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's a really great business. Nicely profitable, and had shown, it demonstrated some really good growth over the past sort of 4 or 5 years. So yeah, it wasn't the business itself wasn't struggling, but it was really about how do we take the business from the sort of current level and current trajectory to sort of ramp that up a bit, and just get more bang for our buck, really. We had a relatively, for the size of business, we had a relatively large development team, which obviously costs a lot of money, and so that's an investment that you've made into the business, and you want to make sure that you're getting the right level and suitable level of return for that investment.
Would you recommend working with me to other companies?
Absolutely, yes, without a shadow of a doubt. No, yeah, I really would, and I'm not just saying that. I think when we presented the outcomes of the project to the rest of the business, the rest of the senior team of the business, and the senior leadership team, and then the wider sort of senior management team, I had nothing but positive comments and surprise. I don't know if that's the right word, but surprise at how much work and information had been gathered and how thorough the whole thing was. And repeatedly the comments were sort of like, we've never done, this is amazing, we've never had this level of insight before. That was quite a common comment.
If another company was facing some of the similar challenges in NPD that you guys were, or perhaps slightly different, what would be your advice to them?
Pick up the phone to Rami. Yeah, no, I mean, I think look, this kind of process is, one of the benefits of using a company such as yours, Rami, is that is the facilitation aspect. Look, we can all read books and come away with ideas and methodologies and things like that, but actually the the real learning happens in the doing. And if you wanted to, I don't know, learn to play the violin, for example, you can read a book on how to play the violin, but there's no substitute for having a violin teacher who plays the violin to show you exactly what you're doing wrong. Your learning is going to be so much quicker. And so, my advice would be, the facilitation aspect of this, and a lot of the things that it's the hard-won lessons, I guess, that you've picked up over the years, Rami, that that just add the value, really. The first thing I would suggest actually people do is go and read some books, is go and read things like The Lean Startup and is it The Startup Way, I think it is, or something.
Yeah, that's the follow-on to it.
Yeah, those books, because they're great places to start. But and then you'll probably come away from having read those books and think, oh, we should really do something like that in our business. And then what? And it's very difficult to then. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's very difficult, individually to try and implement that. And there is an easier path, and the easier path is to use someone like yourself, Rami.
Yeah. No, I mean, because I think one of the biggest things that I'm able to help the team with is shortcut through all the mistakes that have been made over and over again, and just really get that acceleration and learning and just being able to apply the stuff that works and just forget about the stuff that doesn't.
Yeah.
When we started, you and your team, you actually had a whole slew of product ideas. It's not like you actually were trying to figure out what could we build. We don't know what to build. You had a whole bunch of really great ideas. Before working with me, how would you have decided which one to build?
Yeah, so that you're right in the sense that one of our biggest problems was that we had, and it sounds nice problem to have, right? So
yeah.
So many ideas for new products and in areas in which you could take the business that you're kind of spoiled for choice. And the reality is, in terms of how we would have chosen, I mean, the real problem was that we would come up with an idea and think, oh, this is a great idea. And we'd make some steps in terms of moving it forwards. And then another idea would come along and we'd be like, oh, well, this is a great idea too. We should see if that one's viable. And what we ended up with was a lot of ideas which were all sort of incrementally moving forwards. But the trouble with incrementally moving lots of ideas forwards is that you never actually get any to the finish line. Right. And so I think the advantage of what we did, with you, Ram, is that we had to make a brutal decision that this is the idea we're going to focus on, and better to do one thing, one concentrated piece of work as opposed to lots of unconcentrated pieces of work. Yeah.
What were some of the assumptions that you had about what customers wanted?
I think that there was definitely some sort of preconceived ideas there around what the customers wanted. But it was interesting because the product itself had potential applications in various different fields, if you like, and not only that, the product itself could have taken a number of different forms, if you like. So there was a sort of, we'd already identified a sort of evolution of the product, when we sort of first conceived it. And so what we really didn't know was what evolution level needed to fit with which sort of customer segment, and whether or not doing the very, if you like, the easiest and the first on the evolution would actually yield enough return to make the project viable in the first place. So it's like all very well developing a minimum viable product, but actually, if that minimum viable product doesn't, people want minimum viable product number 3, not number 1, then then you've potentially got a bit of a problem.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because one of the really interesting things I got from feedback from the team when I did the postmortem with them was that they said, it never really clicked for us that the MVP is the thing you launch versus your starting point.
Yeah,
and they were like, that's a big thing for us. It's like you take your idea and you strip away all the stuff that you don't actually need and you launch that, and then you can think about what next iterations are like, versus that's where you start and then you start adding to it to come up with something to launch. So I think that's going to make them much faster in their delivery.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Yeah.
What would have been at stake if you had gotten it wrong?
So and look, the reality is you need to weigh these things up from a cost benefit scenario. And you think about what the cost of developing the wrong product is, both in terms of wasted time and effort and money and opportunity cost, and also the impact that then that has on the development team. And then, and weigh that up against what the right product brings to you. And the reality is that, and I'm not going to give away your pricing structure, Rami, but which I'm sure you'll thank me for. But but the reality is the cost. If you think about how much money over this life of a successful product that you hopefully will generate as a result of that, the cost of the course is it's pretty much insignificant. It's a rounding error, hopefully. And so yeah, I mean, it's I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it. I genuinely think, if you want to, you can never guarantee success in any endeavor, but if you want to absolutely maximize your chances of success in developing the right product, then I would thoroughly recommend it. Yeah. But more than that, more like the business and the development team as well, really needed a win, because of the fact that that it's very difficult for us to we've done refreshes on products and things like that. So and that's doing refreshes on products and updating existing products, that's absolutely fine. But a lot of engineers like to work on new things, and it's that sense of sort of achievement of saying, well, before there was nothing and now there is this, and so it's important that I think it's important that your development team can demonstrate actually that they're doing something, some tangible movement forward of the business and the products. And so they really, the team hadn't really had what I would call a win like that for the last couple of years. And so really important, in my opinion, to just try and get them to get that win, so that then success breeds success. So that by having a win, they're more likely to be buoyed up and encouraged in the next one, and so on and so forth. So other obviously there's the investment in developing that product and all the time and money you put into it, so that's important. But there's some sort of, if you like, I wouldn't call it intangible because it is tangible, but more difficult to illustrate on the balance sheet, shall we say? Benefits.
Yeah, and then there's the lost opportunity cost as well, which is always an impact that we don't talk enough about.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, that's something that I constantly bang on to the team about, which is opportunity cost is the highest cost of any business. It's if you wait 6 months, it's 6 months of revenue and profits that you'll never get back.
Right. Right. So for you, what was the biggest impact for you from the process? And then what do you think was the biggest impact for the team from the process?
Um, okay, for me. Uh, so I think that there were two things really. So I really liked the way in which we kept digging and kept digging and kept digging until we found the customer problem. So the problem that we were trying to solve, and it was very insightful, I think, to see that if you like, the problem we were trying to solve develop, because there were many times when we thought, yes, this is definitely the problem, and then you'd be like, are you sure? And then, what about this? And then we'd sort of go back to the drawing board, so to speak. So that was really useful, is that whole insistence on keeping on asking, even when you think you've got the answer, pushing to actually test whether or not you really do have the answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things that the team really cued into pretty early on is how valuable it was to have a pre-done set of questions that everybody asks, the same set of questions, formulated the same way, captured the same way, because that it gave them much cleaner data to be able to go back and sift through and get consistent numbers. So they attached themselves to that very, very early on, and they did a really good job being able to carry that through all the interviews that we did with the customers, which were a little over 30, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's really, that asking the exact same questions I think is so important, because that way, and then recording the answers, so that you can, it isn't just somebody's opinion, or, well, I kind of think they felt this, or they sort of implied this, and whatever they implied can be very much down to whatever the person who's asked the question's feeling on the day, whereas, yeah, when you've got a set structured questions, it's very much easier. It's a lot easier to compare, customer A with customer B and customer C, and etc. So yeah, really useful that.
Having followed a pretty structured approach, right? That's built on validation, that's built on iteration. How do you feel that experience has impacted the team's confidence in making decisions, either for this project or in future projects?
Yeah, I think it's been really beneficial, and the takeaway on that, I think, is that there were many things where we didn't know the answers to the questions, and the answer to not knowing the answer to the questions is go and find out. And how do you find out? Well, the answer is you pick the phone up or you send an email and you speak to the customer, and quite often, and I think we as a business have been guilty of that, is not talking to the customers enough, and not actively picking up the phone or going out and visiting and just asking questions and trying to find answers. And because the answers don't lie within the four walls of your building and your design office and your marketing department, the answers lie out there in the wild, at the coalface, where people are using the products that either you make or the ones that you want to make. And so I kind of think that the business has a renewed confidence to go out and just collect data, and do it, try and put that in all areas. Whenever we have a touch point with a customer, is to be asking them for feedback, asking them questions, and just trying to build up that knowledge base, so that because one of the things we did was that we identified quite early on was that the thing that takes the time is getting all that information from the customer. And so actually we've got this long list of projects we didn't choose for this project, for this accelerator program, but that we at some point we will want to move those forwards. And so that nothing is stopping us from gaining all of that information and knowledge right now. So, so that we can sort of build up some of the answers to some of the questions that we think we're going to want to ask when we get round to those projects now, which will then save time, moving forward on those projects. It will accelerate the other projects as well as this one.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anthony. It's always good to talk to you. I really appreciate it all the time.
Yeah, no, magic. Yeah, thank you. Let's hope that was all right. If there's any bits, if you do it and then you're like, oh god, that's terrible, then just let me know. We can do it again if you want. I'm not. Yeah.
Hopefully we've captured it. This is the first one I do of these.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just as green as you are. So we'll see how it goes.